you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. What is the long-term effect of too much information?
Information, I just need some information. I've been dying. Is it lack of education? I've been reading without any transformation. I'm addicted. Is it overstimulation? Hey.
Welcome to the Sixth Sense Report.
Hear ye, come one, come all. You are listening to the Sixth Sense Report with Darnell Samuels and Jenna Nicoloff.
Yo, bro.
What's going on, Joe? How you feeling?
I'm good, man.
You looking good, man.
Looking fresh?
Looking fresh, baby.
Am I up to dress code?
Okay, I have a question for you. Are you a metrosexual?
No.
Huh? No? Okay.
For the audience who has no idea what that means.
What a metrosexual? It's a man who takes care of himself. Who takes pride in looking fly.
Well, I would have. Oh, so there's other people at the table and they're shaking their head.
Okay.
So why don't we introduce those at the table with us?
I guess. Okay, so we have Ayesha Madden, who is a supervisor at Urban Promise. Works with young ladies. And then we have Jenna Nicoloff, who is a social worker.
Yeah, I specialize in the child and youth worker field.
And she is also Joel's wife.
And currently a mother to our children.
And mother to his 2 children. 2
kids under 2. Not trying for 3 under 3, but
yeah.
I was also the one shaking my head when they asked if you dress stylish.
Yeah.
I thought you were shaking your head at his definition of metrosexual.
No, that's about right. So okay, so I don't feel like I did a good enough job introducing you guys. So Ayesha, why don't you just give more background into who you are?
Okay, so I'm a ministry supervisor at Urban Promise Toronto. So I work primarily with youth ages from like middle school right up to college. And but my background, what I actually studied was fashion design. So that's something that I still do on the side. But that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, cool. And Jenna, about you?
Yeah, so I am a child and youth worker. I've worked mainly with the at-risk population within the foster care system here in Ontario. So I was a foster parent myself. I was a foster home supervisor. I've worked inside the schools as well. So I've had a wide variety of experience here.
Yeah, because like I was saying before, when we were brainstorming episode for this episode, and it's me, Joel, and then we have our 2 interns and they're guys, and so the conversation was just lacking that feminine touch. It was just, man, the conversation was just so one-sided and so testosterone driven. I was just like, nah, this doesn't have the right feel.
Well, I mean, we definitely I would think are less impacted by dress codes in school. So to contextualize, the article from CBC is Toronto. The first basically paragraph of the article kind of summarizes the topic. So the Toronto District School Board is changing the rules around what students can wear in the classroom, making it okay to wear hats, hoods, crop tops, and spaghetti straps, all without worrying about being sent to the principal's office. So I was going to say for us in school, I would think the only thing that became an issue ever was like having a hat on or putting your hood up in such a way that like the teacher couldn't see you. You can't really hide in essence through your clothing for guys. At least that was kind of all my comment before when I said like, I didn't really feel affected by dress codes. I never really had to think about what I was wearing to school.
Yeah, I would disagree. I would say that there is a lot of restriction on boys, but it's not as obvious because it's like you can't have anything that's got gang related, drug related, alcohol related on your shirt, no swearing, no inappropriate phrases. So you take a walk down some flea markets and you see all these ridiculous phrases on some of these t-shirts that all these boys want to wear. And and if you recall, Joel, I just threw out one of your shirts. It said body suntan lotion applicator.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I hadn't worn that one in like 10 years. So
since you're in high school.
Yeah. Okay, so there was an article. We were looking at the article from CBC. Was it? Is it CBC?
Yeah, the CBC article.
Yeah, and so basically to start the conversation, it said this year, school boards in Toronto and BC have rewritten their rules for what students are expected to wear, putting the emphasis on student choice instead. but some parents and teachers are wary of what this will do to the classroom. Is this a cause for concern?
I would say I personally don't think it's a cause for concern. Growing up in the high school that I went to, they didn't enforce the dress code as much. I don't know if it was because in art school and we were just more expressive, but I think a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing is about the dress code doesn't necessarily have to do with the person's behavior. So I don't think me wearing spaghetti straps is going to cause me to be disrespectful to a teacher. And I think there's a lot of negative assumptions that come with some of the dress code rules, and I don't agree with those stereotypes. So I think people might be, I don't know, I guess overthinking it. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. How about you, Jenna?
It just depends. Like, you want to remember, like, what's the environment about? It's about learning. So, you know, what you wear can impact that, right? Because it impacts what people view you as. It's not so much, as you were saying, about how they'll act towards a teacher, but it's more how's the teacher going to act towards them, right? Because we all judge people, right? Like, we'll get into that a little later, I think, but it's just, you want to remember that this is a professional environment. This is people's student careers, not just, you know, walking down the mall.
Yeah, that's interesting you say student careers. Yeah, I know it's kind of weird because it's good that all four of us are here because we all had different experiences at school, because I went to a Catholic school and a public school. But I'm also historically, I've been a bad student. Right? So I'm representing that demographic, and I'm a grown man now, and like if I had kids and, you know, my kid would have come to me and says, yo, Dad, I want to get this new bomber jacket. I need this to go to school. You know, the first thing in my head is, you know, I don't send you to school to be cool. Like, I don't care what you look like. Like, you know, in this household, like, I'm grown now, but you know what I mean? But now, you know, the school landscape looks different. So for me saying, your clothing shouldn't matter. Like, yes, you go there. Yes, you know, you want to fit in, but your main goal is school. Like, what people think of you is irrelevant. So just go in there and it's all business. But
yeah, I mean, not to punch back at you. It's easy to say it on a very like objective, not facing your kids' emotional pleas at the same time, right? Like, because I would say as an overriding principle, it's a fair position to hold, but then, you know, managing your child's emotional growth and development kind of counters that a little bit, because if they're, you know, traumatized or just, you know, bullied, and your potential enforcement of standards on them is going to make them more bullied, you know, you're going to have to kind of wrestle with that.
Yeah. And I guess that in that sense, yes, you're right. Like, that could impact, you know, that could impact your learning, I guess, and see how that goes. But the next question I have is, we see a fashion trend where we see a simplifying of the dress code in the workplace, which trickles down to the school system. So the culture wants to create a work and learning environment that fosters equality and respect. So a safe space where we can be free from judgment. So my question is it possible to dress as we please without being judged or discriminated against?
I'm going to go with no. I'm currently studying social psychology in university, and just everything I've learned is just like your judgments are subconscious a lot of the time. Like, they're not as aware as people think they are. So there's, you know, people see you and then they'll just have a judgment, and it takes a lot to change that. There's something called the confirmation bias, where it's a tendency to interpret, seek, and create information in ways to verify existing beliefs. So if you have a girl walking around with like a little top on and a little mini skirt on, you're going to think of her as not taking this serious. And now the teachers have to change that mindset, which becomes very difficult to do.
I agree. I think people are always going to judge and discriminate based on what you're wearing. I just think that now with there not being such a strict dress code, people can't use it as a reason to excuse their biases. As someone who has personally been kind of discriminated against because of like something as simple as like a headband, or like the way that my hair is worn, it helps. They can't use that as an excuse to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to send you to the office, or I'm going to expel you for this and that, because it's not professional. So I think it's more than just, like the clothes that we wear. Of course, there's always going to be, people are going to judge you. It's just a natural thing that happens, but people can't excuse it anymore. Like use it as a reason to put you in a box basically and punish you.
Yeah, I think, your point with respect, if noticing that most of the dress code pullbacks are, especially let's say in the female space, are around modesty, just kind of pulling back a little bit of the modesty aspect of those. I think, there's a component where depending on your morality, you may value modesty higher or lower, and being able to enforce that through a dress code, I think is a good example of what you're saying, where, there's obviously multiple layers and nuances, but I just thought of it's a really easy way for the listener to kind of go, okay, yeah, I can totally see if you're pro modesty and modesty is part of the dress code, someone who's pushing that line, you now have a means to use it against them. Now, I think there's a room for conversation around not being modest enough and how that can take away from the environment, whether that's work, school, whatever. But the other side, I think for guys, that's interesting is more and more within the workplace environment, there's a pull away from, like, let's call it the super formal. So everything is kind of trickling down, where even at the, other than a job interview, being in a full suit is almost abnormal, especially in the younger and younger generations. There's a podcast I listen to, which is no surprise to anyone, where they just talk about, literally being in a sports coat and a dress shirt as like the top of the class of being dressed up. The formal wear is left for weddings and kind of the whatever ballroom type of stuff, especially in a work environment. Not to say that that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just
I think that was only inevitable, as people used to dress up to the nines to go to church, to go to the movies, to go all these. Now it's like people go to the movies in their pajamas.
Yeah.
And slippers.
Yeah, no. For me, I'm looking at it. I totally agree with Jenna, what you're saying about the subconscious. And I find fashion fascinating in that, I believe that like clothing is symbolic of things, and it sends signals to how people should treat you. So, like, for example, colors, right? A person wearing all black versus a person wearing all colors. The other day at work, this girl made fun of me. So they call me grandpa at work because I wear a cardigan, right? And so
metrosexual of you.
Yeah. but it was funny because I was just like, well, and I was talking, I was like, well, why do you call me grandpa? Well, because the piece of clothing I'm wearing represents like that traditional old school grandpa style. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm confident in myself to be able to wear that piece and not feel like self-conscious. But the point I'm making is just like, from the shoes we pick, are we actually thinking about like what are you wearing, Joel? What are you wearing right now?
I'm wearing sandals because it's still summer.
But okay, but those aren't just sandals, man.
No, they're Birks.
They're Birkenstocks.
Well, to take it, I exploited my benefits and I got orthotic Birks.
Okay,
because I got them for free.
Okay,
That's great.
Right? Okay, you see what I'm saying? I'm wearing white on white Air Force Ones. The point being, they
$10 flats.
$10 flats. Well, what do you wear? What are you rocking right
Adidas,
now, girl?
Classic Adidas.
All right, so classic.
Oh no, Reebok. Sorry,
All
I
right.
forgot to change my shoes.
Okay, all right, the Reebok Classics. Yes, the white on white.
Yeah.
Okay, see, all right. So now we're talking about what these pieces of clothing symbolize, or footwear, what they symbolize, and subconsciously people see that. Okay, well, they see Joel's Birkenstocks, they're like, oh, he's a casual guy, very low key, simple footwear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They see me with the Air Force One, They're like, okay, all right, I see
and
Ding with the air.
let's get it right. They're still white.
They're still taking care of my joints.
Yes.
You know, crease free. But the the point being that these things symbolize things. And as we're on the topic of shoes, and we have the ladies here, so you guys, so for those who are sneakerheads, they already know what I'm going to ask the ladies. Is it true that that's the first thing a woman looks at when she sees a man? His shoes. Is that true?
I don't think it's the first thing, but it's a factor.
It's a factor.
One of the things,
How
I think the
hold
better
on.
question is,
Hold on. How's
is
it
it one of the first things you notice?
So okay,
Oh my God.
unpack that. Unpack that, Ayesha.
First thing, well, it's not a huge thing for me, but I know there's definitely females who are like, oh my gosh, his shoes are gross. Like, I know someone who, she was with him at the time. I don't think it'll stop people from like interacting or females from interacting with males, but if your shoes are a certain type of way, I think it does say something about you. And I don't think there's anything wrong with necessarily having an opinion about someone based on the way they dress. I just think that if you allow it to stop you from getting to know the person, then I think that's when it becomes a bit superficial.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I don't really notice shoes that often, to be honest. I just kind of notice like the fit of their clothes. Are they like super baggy, or they're like super tight? Like, you know, and just kind of are they dressed that fits them well?
So I think, you know, both of you guys, and even Darnell's question, it's coming to this issue of how you present yourself matters. And so the concern, I would think, you know, from mine and Jenna's conversations, would be by relaxing dress codes, are we forgetting to teach kids that how you present yourself matters?
Well, it's also just like going back to the being judged part, like, you know, you mentioned the workplace is relaxed it as well and it's trickling down into the school systems, but like you think of how many thousands of dollars social psychologists have spent on finding how to best dress for an interview and all these things, because the way you first look is what people are going to think of you, and then you have to make, then if it's wrong, you have to counteract it, and that is so much harder to do
Than reinforcing.
That old what's that old saying? You know, first impressions are lasting impressions, right? So you know, yeah, because like at most workplaces, they're you know, toning down their dress code, and the idea is, you know, be yourself, come as you are, be comfortable. But in the interview, you know, we call you for the interview, and you come in, do you come as you are? You know what I mean? Like,
come presenting the best version of you.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Because you know, I remember when I had a part-time job at Bulk Barn, and
Way back.
and this young man came in for an interview wearing his bed slippers.
That
Right.
guy didn't get the job.
Huh?
That guy didn't get the job.
No, he didn't get the job, but he, you know, there's just been a change. There's definitely a change, because, you know, I mean, like, when I was 15, 16, you know, my first job was a dishwasher, and I think I wore a tie to the interview. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Like, it didn't matter what your job was. Like, you're getting overly dressed, right? Oh, I'm gonna go work at Sport Check as a
you're
sales
right.
associate.
Yo, it didn't matter. Yes, you're right.
Right? Like, I'm gonna be wearing a uniform. I'm gonna be, you know, certain level of clothing. I'm going, okay, like, maybe I don't have a sports coat, but I'm wearing a shirt and tie to the interview. You know, even though I'm just working in a sales associate position at like a, you know, Joe Schmo retail position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, you know, it just changed a lot. Like, I agree that we should be judged less by our appearance, but matter of fact is it's in our brains. We can't change it. Like, so do we dress to how we want and then deal with the judgments people give us? Well, then you're gonna have to deal with those consequences, because unfortunately it is what it is. Like, can you honestly say you've ever gone through a day without judging someone that's walked down the street?
Right. And I think also, just to flip the question I asked you guys, the ladies, I think for the fellas, like, when it comes to women, and I don't know what your perspective is, Joel, but, you know, men of course, men and women are different and we look at things differently. But for guys, I don't think guys really judge women based on their gear, but whether she's hot or not. And guys are very decisive. Despite what you guys might think, guys are very decisive. It's either you're hot or you're not. It's either I'm going to cross the street and I'm going to come talk to you, or I'm not.
But would you say the clothing they wear affects that? So if I'm walking down the street in sweatpants and a baggy sweater, am I going to be looking as attractive or hot as if I'm wearing a short skirt and a crop top? Right.
Yes. So guys don't say things like, oh, like, yeah, her jacket's fly or her shoes are nice, but that doesn't attract you. You're not attracted to the clothes. You're attracted to the body. So yeah, of course, yeah. If she's wearing something,
if the body's concealed versus presented.
Yeah. But we're no guys really admiring her clothes. In fact, it might even scare some guys because it just shows she has high taste and you can't afford her. You know what I mean?
And I mean, I would say there's levels to that, right? Like, so a girl can dress in a way that's not baggy clothes and completely hiding herself, but the modesty of her clothes can be attractive to you, as opposed to being overly presentable, or whatever the proper term is. That's a horrible term. Where like, you're starting to think like, okay, maybe that girl doesn't align with the lifestyle choices that I want to make, right? If she's, a little bit more revealing than I'm comfortable with, because if I'm feeling, every other guy's going to look at her in a way that I don't want them to look at her. And so maybe I'm not attracted to that girl because of the persona that goes beyond her. So again, I would say it's the guys read the whole, what they're taking in with respect to their body, but also how they're presenting themselves, as opposed to, oh, that shirt's really nice. It's more of she's well kept. Yeah. Like she dresses well, as opposed to the particulars. I don't know
So what you're saying is that every time a woman asks her man, do you like this dress? They just say yes. Because they don't actually know if they like it or not.
No comment. Next question, please.
Oh, what? Well, no, I mean, it's like, I would think, in response to that question, I know for me,
I just don't ask you that question.
Me and Jenna have
because Tyra asked me that question too.
And I'll give Jenna a straight up answer for the most part, but I'm also, I would say when it comes to like brands or particular, sort of like style stuff, totally outside of my like, meh. It's
the question is how much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So no. Give me a break.
No. So Tyra takes me with her. So usually I'm like helping her pick clothes. Yeah. And so she'll ask me, okay, how does this look? And I got in trouble one time because I said it looks fine. And fine's not the right answer, right? Because I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. Just throw it on. We're late. Just throw it on. Let's go. It's fine.
Yeah, it's the 17th shirt you tried on. It's good.
Yeah.
If you like it, we're good.
And then I can't remember what happened, but I guess it came out that there was something wrong with the clothing, or I didn't really like it. And she's like, oh, so why don't you say that? And I was like, yeah, well, I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's fine.
We don't want fine.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. So Tyra didn't want fine, and she's like, yeah, don't do that to me next time. If I ask you what I look like, I need you to be honest and tell me. So I'm like, all right, okay, yeah, all right. So it's just one of those little nuances. But okay, so the next question is, so in the CBC article, Toronto District School Board revises its dress code. The president of the Ontario Secondary School Teachers Federation, Leslie Wolfe, said, but I think people will quickly come to understand that we're at a time now where there's a recognition that dress policies in the past unfairly targeted female and female identified students and over-sexualized them. When it comes to dress codes, women usually get the bulk of the criticism. Why is that?
Because women want to show more skin than men?
Well, I would say that I think part of the problem is that, like if you look at the hats and hoodies, it's a really easy in the classroom resolution. Like take that off, right? Like if they don't listen, you send them to the office. If they listen, it's done. Whereas like, how do you resolve a spaghetti strap problem?
Yeah. Personally, I think the issue with women is that, they're women. and women are beautiful, and men are not. You know what I mean? Like, the young kids. Women have that effect to make a man's head turn. So, and God has blessed them that way, and so it's kind of like this power that women have to kind of nuance, I feel.
I think a lot of it falls back on women, because also just like the way that we're portrayed in like basically everything. We were seen as objects and just things to just like, as opposed to just who we are as a person too. I think it's never coupled together, and there's nothing wrong with like people seeing how beautiful we are. Like you were saying, we're created that way. But like you were saying, I agree. We just have a lot more things to reveal, and people are watching us a bit more in that sense, because we are seen as, unfortunately, a lot of times we're just seen as just objects of things to just, we're over sexualized. And so a lot of it but I don't, again, I think spaghetti straps and me exposing my shoulder, if that is causing you to do lustful things, then I think you also have to check your heart as well, and where you're at. So
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Like, women are seen as beauty, right? That's kind of how we're visualized within the media and everything. And, for men, they can wear a t-shirt with a slogan on it, and they can wear a different t-shirt with a slogan on it, and they essentially look the same. Women have a lot more expression in their wardrobe, a lot more variety, than a lot of guys, right? Because we have skirts, shorts, skirts, pants, dresses, right? Guys
Did you say skirts?
I did say skirts.
What's that?
A skirt with a shorts underneath it.
Oh.
Modesty,
Tennis.
baby.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know
right?
that.
Guys have pants and shorts, right? We've got tank top, t-shirts, like off the shoulder shirt, like all these ridiculous things. Men have,
Like
t-shirts, long sleeve shirts.
V-neck versus crew.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do I have a collar?
Girls even got the square neck going on.
yeah, there's a lot of options.
There's a lot more emphasis on us because there's a lot more variety, and there's so many stores dedicated to just women clothing. How many stores are dedicated to just men clothing? Not a lot.
Mostly just suits. Like Moores.
Yeah.
Like that echelon. Everything else kind of falls into a big box.
Yeah.
That covers everything.
Yeah.
So then, in the term like dress to impress the opposite sex, so how much does the opposite sex influence the way we dress? Is that a good thing or bad thing?
Well, if the whole point's about expressing ourselves within the article, that's what they're saying is the reasoning for part of the reason they want to change these dress codes, then it should be about yourself. But I would say that for teenage girls who are probably pushing this the most, it's about attracting the hot, athletic boy they like or whatever.
Yeah, I just think, I don't, there's not a problem with you wanting to dress to impress the opposite sex. But it's the way in which that you do that. So, like when I get dressed and I'm single, so like obviously, if I'm going on a date or something, like I'm going to wear something particular because that's part of who I am. I want them to be attracted to me as well. But I think, there's a certain line, like I don't want them to think, like, as you guys were mentioning before, that I'm just all out there, I'm just here to sleep with you kind of thing, or you to just treat me as an object. I think that we have to be aware of that. So I agree. I think when they're in high school, they're teenagers, their hormones are raging, they're trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out themselves essentially. So I think, but we can't depend on the school to teach our children those things. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. The school is such a secular place. There's going to be lots of different influences. But I think if we're, trying to look more into their behavior and what we're teaching our kids to wear. But yeah, I think with the lax dress code, it is going to be a lot more midriff showing.
Sorry, what is that? A midriff?
Midriff is like just your mid area, like your belly, your stomach.
Oh,
Your stomach area.
Okay.
Although, and I think
No, you don't wear belly
You're
tops
not
often.
yeah.
So you're not that much of a metrosexual.
I know.
But yeah, so and booty shorts, and it's just, I don't know. It's a hard one because you want people to have the freedom to be able to be able to express themselves. But to teach these girls, it's more than just, you need, especially guys, to not just look at your body, to want you for more than that, you know? Yes, you want to be attracted to a certain degree, but also you want them to be attracted to your mind and your heart and what you're about and what you're passionate about. So,
yeah, if it's all about expressing yourself, what is it really expressing yourself by showing your midriff and, right? Like, you know, if you want to wear, like, I've got more of an issue with the midriff than I do the spaghetti straps, because it's like, whatever. Like, I've never really known a man to be like, ooh, that shoulder. Oh, yeah. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you see, like, the big torso, because I can remember, you know, when my brothers are older than me, when they were in high school, like, one of my brother's girlfriends would come and she was wearing, like, I swear, it was like a foot-long torso. And I was like, okay. She got the world's lowest jeans and the highest shirt. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I got to
low rise?
Low-rise jeans, yeah. And then I got to high school and it was like long shirts were in. I was like, sweet. This is so much easier on me. I don't have to worry that I got a flat stomach to wear stylish clothes.
There's a lot of pressure on you guys.
There is.
Yeah, man.
Which is funny, because if the point is to dress to impress the opposite sex, you just mentioned that you don't really notice how, like, in style we are compared to the next girl.
You're probably more competing against or comparing to each other about your in style than you are with, you know, the boys looking at how much stylish.
Yeah, why do you think girls go shopping in groups?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, you know, to touch on that point and back to my previous point, so as a guy, I think, yes, you know, there's women who dress revealing, but then the women who dress modestly and dress well, I think that also stands out as well. And it says a lot about her. And in my personal opinion, in my little book of
Darnell's thoughts.
Yeah. I think my theory is this: fine is fine. So for women, you know, it's either you're born with it or you're not. Your hair doesn't make you, your clothes don't make you. If you're fine, you're fine. Whether you're wearing hoodies or not. Like, my wife is fine. And when I mean she's fine, I mean tie head, go to bed, wake up, my wife is fine. Even in the morning. So even if we're going to a wedding and she gets dressed up, it's just adds on to it. And so the point I'm making is that, so, you know, so my wife dressed modest. She dressed modestly, and it stands out. You're just like, okay, wow, like, she's beautiful, but also it says, like, I'm judging her. I'm like, wow, she's serious. She's confident in herself. All these little subconscious points are being made by a woman dressing modestly. So I don't want, you know, any of the ladies to listen and be like, okay, well, you know, sexy is where it's at. I'm like, well, if you want a husband and you want to be taken, not forget husband, if you want to meet the family, yo, you got to dress a different way. Because I'll be honest, I'll be 100. You know, if you're dressing reckless, you will get to the bedroom, but you won't get to the dinner table. Right? It's just not happening. Like, I don't want to speak for Joel, but I know in my days, when, you know, I wasn't born, I didn't come up in the church. So that's how I used to move. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. She's hot. She's definitely gonna catch something, but she's not meeting my mom. That's just not. It's just not. It's not happening, because I'm like, yeah, no, this is not the kind of woman I want to take home to my mom. So far.
Sure. And, like, I'm a modest dresser myself. I've always have been. I don't know where it came from, because my mom even says I dress too modestly sometimes. It's true. And then, you know, in grade 8, the guys decided to get together and make the top 10 hottest list, and I made that list.
Really?
Oh yeah, I made that list, modestly and all. No cleavage.
Okay, no, but you know, we're laughing, but that's
claim to fame.
We're laughing, but that's a good point, though. That's a very good point. You're like, yeah, okay, you know, although that's so immature, but
this is the age we're talking about.
Yeah,
though.
but yeah, you're right. Yeah, like, yeah, if they did make the list and you made the list, but dressing modestly, then that confirms my point. Hot is hot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like, so sometimes I'll tell, you know, the young girls that I mentor, I'm like, yo, you don't gotta stress. You ain't gotta stress, you know, having the fly shoes, the dope dress, the hype jacket. That doesn't matter. Like, if you're fine, you're fine. You know what I mean? And at some point, somebody's gonna notice it.
But I also think like modest doesn't equal unsexy.
I agree.
You know, so you can still be modest and still be sexy and still express yourself. And I think that's a narrative that isn't stressed enough. I think a lot of the times, like, it's either you have to be super revealing in order to be sexy, or you have to be like basically a nun and cover your whole self up, and that's it, right?
Yes.
And that's something that I try to stress with my girls is like, you don't have to reveal everything, but you can still express yourself and still be sexy. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with being sexy.
Yeah.
And I think, that's a narrative that's not spoken enough.
No, I want you to keep talking about that, because there was a video that came up on Facebook of the work that you do with the girls, and you make prom dresses for the girls, because you know how to do that. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, yeah, basically it birthed out of the fact of like, it was a gift I wanted to give them if they'd graduated high school, because for a lot of them, they were the first one in their family. But also in the back of my mind, I know that some of these girls may have struggled with body image, also just what to wear, what not to wear. Some of them weren't confident enough. Some of them were a little, weren't confident, but showing it in different ways to try and impress people. So I really wanted them to understand that they can still look beautiful and not have to basically wear next to nothing, which is becoming this weird trend right now with prom dresses. A lot of mesh and see-through stuff. So and again, like, to each its own, but I really wanted them to know that they could still look beautiful and not have to compromise who they are or compromise their values
and their comfort level.
Yeah, and to their comfort level, exactly, right? But yeah, that's basically.
You know, not to hang on that, but Ayesha, that sounds so deep, because that sounds so intimate. Because, like, you know, the girl comes to you and she shows you the picture. I want this. And then you, as the older person, you're just like, you know, side eye. You're like, you know what, boo? You know?
Yeah.
You know, so like,
You don't really want that.
Yeah. So how does that go? That discussion?
I think, so when they come to me, I usually just tell them, don't just show me one dress. Show me different aspects of different dresses. I want to catch the vibe of what they want, because once I understand what, like, again, the vibe and the style that they're kind of looking towards, then, and I see their body type and I see what they're about, knowing them on a personal level, I can then discern, okay, and then I come up with my own design for them to say, okay, I think this would be more flattering. And sometimes through the process, like, we make some changes, but I think it's easier to do when you have a relationship with them, to be like, hey, look, I don't say that this won't look good on you, but I'm like, hey, we should try this instead. I think having off the shoulder, having a split, and then having a mini dress underneath would be more flattering for you, and an A-line thing, as opposed to something that's super fitted and you're not necessarily going to feel comfortable in. So yeah, I more point to what looks good on them than what doesn't look good on them.
Yeah.
And I think that brings up an interesting point, going back to the schools, you know, about like trying to talk to girls about what they wear. And you mentioned that it's best done with a relationship, but a lot of these teachers don't have relationships with their students in that intimate level that you do. So when you have this teacher come up to you and be like, you need to go cover up, like, what do you think they're going to say?
Yeah.
Right.
So how is that message interpreted? It's, you know, obviously taken in a negative context. And I mean, this, you know, to some extent begs the question of like, okay, if we're relaxing dress code, you know, we've kind of touched on this already, but like, who then becomes responsible for teaching people how to dress? And, you know, I would say there was probably an argument historically that the dress code was setting the standard as an implicit way of teaching people how to dress. But as both of you guys just indicated, that idea of a personal relationship and back and forth has much more influence on decision making and preparing people to make the decision for themselves than just saying, here's the rules you have to follow. And by somehow following those rules, you're going to learn how to dress.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good segue, Joel. Because in the article, there was a parent who said, she asked, they can express themselves, but there should be limits on it. Who would you say is responsible for, like, who would you guys say is responsible for teaching? Yeah.
Teaching how to dress.
Yeah, because like, I think the article is implying that the school is. It's implicitly implying, because the school is kind of setting the standard and parents are kind of saying, okay, well, if the school says it's okay, then I guess. Now, of course, parents know that's not the case, but I was in our brainstorming with Joel. I got this concept, and let me know what you guys think. I think that our style, our dress code, or more so our style, not dress code, but our style comes from our parents.
I would have to disagree.
Yeah.
Me and my mom have polar opposites.
No,
Okay, but that doesn't mean it doesn't come from your parents.
No,
because
no.
it comes out of your environment, right? Because I said the same thing. I was like, the things I experienced being dressed by my parents, I can see how they've shaped how I want to dress today. And it was more because I had a brother who's the same age as me, and I remember he got the blue one, I got the green one, or I got the blue one. You're like, we got the same clothes all the time, and so there was an aspect of me striving for individuality with my clothing. That I can see rooted in that experience of me as a child. And so,
yeah, I would say like the way my mother dressed me growing up has shaped me how I dress now, but in the complete opposite manner. And the fact that I will probably never wear those things, right? My mom like was so excited to have a girl. It was all pink and flowers and like all these like super crazy patterns. And now I'm just like plain Jane, you know, like very little pink, if any, and like no patterns, just solid colors. Like, yeah.
How about you, Ayesha?
I think your parents do have a lot of influence, but I don't think they're the only ones. And like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of pressure from school, with your friends and trying to fit in, especially during those high school years. But I think again that it comes down, I guess it does in a sense come down to your parents because of how you're raised and your influence and what you were taught. So like for me, I did go through a confusing time in high school, but as I started to get older and get into the older grades of like grade 12, I started realizing like I need to stop caring what these people think and I need to just do my own thing and express myself in the way that I want. But that was also something that was instilled from my mom from a young age, to be true to yourself, and not try to always fit the norm. What everyone is doing isn't necessarily right either, right? So yeah, I think, I guess it does kind of.
So then, because like you went to school for fashion, so what made you do that?
Fashion, and essentially it was my mom. She used to sew a lot, and then I, in high school, I was a part of the fashion show, designed stuff for that, and so you're already fashion savvy, man. Why you being all modest out here? No, I would say like I liked being creative with my clothing. That was always a thing for me, I guess, and it was just a way to express myself. But also as I got older and I realized how much clothing has an influence on our life, and now working with girls, I think a lot of that, because I didn't just start working at Earn Promise, I volunteered throughout high school and worked there. So I realized that the influence that I was having, and I realized that the girls were starting to follow suit. So I was like, I wanted to show them. I was very intentional about showing them that, again, you can still be sexy, true to yourself, and comfortable without having to reveal too much. So
yeah, I think a lot of the influence for me when I was a teenager came from the girls I looked up to, whether that was a peer in my grade that was more popular than me, or I had a cousin, my older cousin lived with me at the time. I stole a lot of her clothes when I went to school, right? Like, because we shared a room. So I was like, you're not wearing this today, can I wear it? She's like, sure. So like, you know, I got to dress with like an older girl does, even though it might not have been the most stylish, but it was just like, I looked up to her. So that's, I think, where a lot of these girls get their impressions from at teenage years. Like, your values come from your parents, that's going to come out in how you dress. But I think a lot of the pressure in how you dress comes from your peers.
It's interesting. Yeah, no, well, because the way I dress comes from my parents, and that's why I made that conclusion. So, you know, my mom always told me, you know, you got to leave the house looking like somebody's child. Like, you know, like, so iron your pants, dress for the occasion. So she would always, and it's weird because she would always buy me, as a little boy, she would always buy me traditional grown man pieces. So
Cardigans?
I had, pardon?
Cardigans?
Yeah, cardigans. Yeah, cardigans, suit jackets,
bow tie.
Bow ties, and then my mom bought me like this overcoat, like this wool overcoat that you wear over your suit. You know, as a little boy. Now, you know, I'm probably like 7, so I'm gonna grow out of it. I only wore it once.
Wow.
I wore it once, but that was, you know, my mom was just saying, okay, well, you need an overcoat, so when you go to church, you know, you look proper. And so And it was a nice, you know, you're like, oh,
Look fresh.
feels nice. Well, you know what? It felt nice. You know, the material felt nice.
Warm.
I looked like a grown man, even though I was 7. I thought that was kind of cool. You know what I mean? And those things. So now that I'm older, and I'm like, okay, yeah. So for me, you know, that's still at the back of my head. That still rings in the back of my head. My father, I found a picture of him when I was, you know, with me and my little sister at the park, and you know, my dad was wearing something that guys are wearing right now. Like he was like, if you looked at the picture, you'd have been like, yo, when was this picture taken? Well, yo, bro, it was taken like almost 30 years ago. And, you know, my dad's, you know, he's wearing his bandana and he's wearing this V-neck sweater, orange V-neck sweater, burgundy, you know, sun fit pants. And I'm just like, oh, and then the casual shoes with no socks. And I'm just like, yo, this is crazy. I'm like, this is what guys are rocking right now.
Fashion goes in cycles. That's why.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So it was just one of those things. I was like, okay, wow. So I say all that to say that, you know, yes, you know, the school does not determine what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. You know, there's times where our parents don't let us leave the house, where they're like, no.
You're not wearing that.
No, you're not wearing. What is that? Has that happened to you guys at all?
Yeah, like, so a lot of my enforcement of dress came from when I was a foster parent and I was fostering these teenage girls. I had 4 in my house at the time. So of course they all wanted to dress, and I always had to send them back to their room, be like, go cover your stomach, you know, the school is not going to let you dress like that, and like, you shouldn't dress like that. And I had one girl that ran away on me, and had a court date. So I showed up at the court date, and she comes and she's in a pair of jeans that are ripped to shreds. I'm like, I don't even know how they're staying together. And she walked into the courtroom. She walked in the courtroom and stood in front of the judge, and the judge said, turn around and get out. You got to go back and get some clothes. The judge kicked her out. So like this whole, like, I'm just expressing myself. You got to remember, there is a standard, and it is
In certain places.
There's a professional environment. So like, you're not in school as much as you think you are. Like, you're in school from maybe 8 to 2, and then you're out of school from 2 to 10. So you're actually out of school more. So you have more time to express yourselves on those times. And if the school wants to maintain a professional environment, because that's their
standard.
Yeah, and that's what they want to facilitate. Then I think they're in the right to do that.
Yeah, and that's why I totally agree. I liked how Jenna said it. You know, it's a professional environment. Now, when I was in school, I was unprofessional.
You were not there for school.
Oh, bro. I was so unprofessional. But now I'm a grown man, and Jenna, I'm going to use that term. Yeah, it's a professional environment, and we forget that. Like, you know, one day when I become a father, like, I have to communicate to my kid, like, look, like, I understand, you know, we want to be fly, fresh to death, all that. But at the end of the day, bro, this is all business. This is all money. I'm sending you to school to get that money. You could be fly later. I need you to pass this test. I need you to be in the library. I need you to be studying. You know what I mean? And then worry about that other stuff later. So yeah, I totally agree with that. That point, Jenna. And so now, like looking at, you know, the dress code from a guy's perspective, and then, you know, when we go out and then, you know, we get dressed, I think we still take into account what women think.
Yeah, I think, you know, the dress code piece is, you know, not as important as like how are we expected to dress in the given context, right? So job interview, you know, historically, you know, church, different things where like, okay, what's the expectation of me? And whether consciously or subconsciously, you're thinking about what is that expectation of me. And I think that applies to females as well, whether that's what's the expectation from, okay, this guy's going to see me. How do I want him to interpret it? Or like, but it's always about the expectations set.
Yeah. Tom Ford, the suit designer, you know, he has a quote, and I use it a lot. You know, he said that, you know, dressing well is a form of manners, of showing manners. It's good manners. And so, you know, even bringing it to scripture and looking at the king who invited people to his event. And
you better know this parable. You shared it at your wedding.
I know. But what happened was he provided the garments. He provided the clothing for his event. And so there was somebody who wanted to come to the event and didn't want to wear the garment. He didn't want to wear it. He wanted to be hidden. He wanted to do his own thing. And the king says, throw him out into the utter darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Right? And you're like, oh, wait, weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's hell language. Right? So, right? So it's deep. But what we're saying is like, yo, like there's a time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, there's good manners in dressing appropriately for the event. Right? So, we talk about weddings, right? So when you go into the wedding, there's a dress code for the wedding, and you want to dress well because you want to show
Respect.
the hosts. Yeah, like you're like, yo, I don't want to disrespect your event. If I'm going to an Indian wedding or like a traditional, like a really traditional African wedding, and their traditional garments are what's seen as respectful, I'm going to go get one of the outfits. I'm not going to come and do my own. I'm not going to disrespect nobody's event. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not the place to express yourself.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, you know, in context of that, like, you know, so you think some weddings are a little less formal. My attitude has always been like, I'd rather be overdressed than underdressed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In those contexts, right? So in the sense of disrespect, I'd rather I went over and above. Like, someone's not going to feel disrespected because I overdressed.
Right.
They might laugh because I'm the only one in a shirt and tie and a suit jacket when it's like a hillbilly wedding. But
Or
they're not going to be, it's the opposite effect of like, I'm showing up in jeans and a t-shirt at a wedding that's, you know, everyone else is in suits.
yeah, or the opposite would happen where people are like, oh shoot, yo, Joel, you fly. You the flyest guy in the room.
Yeah.
Because
you know
you're
what I mean?
overdressed.
Yeah. Well, part of it too is you're not overdressed in a way to say I'm uncomfortable and I don't feel confident or comfortable in what I'm wearing.
Mm-hmm.
You're overdressed in you're confident in what you're wearing. Like, yo, I know I look fly. So if y'all ain't on getting
can't
on
tell
with
me
this,
they're
not on
yeah,
my
yeah,
level.
yeah, you can't tell me nothing. You know what I mean?
I will say that situation did happen to Joel. We had a
Oh, really?
family
Okay, because
friend-
I have another
we had a
situation
backyard
about
wedding.
Joel.
We had a
Okay.
family friend who had a backyard wedding, and Joel and I have known this woman for like 20 plus years, and she had a backyard wedding. Just so you know, not that usually tells you that it's not as formal. But Joel had just gotten this really nice suit from his brother's wedding, so he decks it all out, and you know, and I was like, you're gonna be the only guy that's wearing like that. And he's like, no, it's all right. My dad walks in, and he's like, you're overdressed.
But
Call
you
it
know,
out.
it's like, and that's like, you know, there, like, I kind of have a spectrum of like, okay, how would I dress to a wedding? And I was like, you know, certain, whether it's color coordination, whatever it was, that like, I'd rather be at this, you know, overdressed stage than, you know, Jenna was like, no, you wear this. And I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I just didn't like the way it looked. You know, let's say it was just like polo and dress pants. And I was like, you know, for whatever reason, my options were like full suit or polo and dress pants. Maybe it was like the dress pants I wanted to wear were dirty. So I was like, no, I'm going full suit. But I don't remember, you know, I don't remember the nuances, but I
Yeah.
do remember choosing to be overdressed intentionally.
Yeah, and that's what dress code does. I feel like the dress codes create hierarchy. Who's the man? Who's not the man? For lack of a better term. And that's why we kind of see the culture kind of, you know, the culture's, you know, anti-hierarchy, anti-patriarchy. Certain pieces of clothing symbolize manhood, who's the boss, standard of what's accepted, what's not accepted, and I can see why they want people to feel accepted, and dress code is symbolic of it's symbolic of hierarchy, and so, you know, blurring those lines is what it feels like, in my opinion. It feels like that's what they're the workplace is trying to do. You can't tell the difference between who's the boss and who's the employee, the employer. You know what I mean? So you kind of see that happening in the workplace and also possibly in the school. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, students feel like they're not professionals, which is what we mentioned earlier. But I'm like, if we turned it around that the teachers could wear whatever they want, I'm sure a lot of parents and students would not be okay with it.
Yeah, the NBA shut that down years ago, like in the 90s, when
In terms of what you can
the Iverson era, where dudes were coming with the baggy jeans and the basketball jerseys and the baseball caps, and then David Stern, he shut that down, and that was a big controversy. And he's just like, and the argument was saying, okay, well, look, fellas, you're professionals now. Like you guys have to come in and dress appropriately. And in light of that, so now today, Iverson was making some commentary, and he's just like, well,
practice.
Like, but Iverson was talking about the way guys dress now. So I don't know if you guys follow, so the way guys dress now, Iverson's just like, okay, Russell Westbrook, Dwayne Wade, they're very out there with what they're wearing. And Iverson's just like, yo, like, this is a little bit no different than what I'm wearing. Actually, this is worse. Iverson's like, this is worse. Like, what Westbrook is wearing to games is worse.
It's like it's a suit, but it's over the top.
Yeah, or not even just a suit. Sometimes it's just over the top, and I'll have to probably post some stuff in the show notes. And that's why I went on that rant. Remember that rant I was going on Twitter and Facebook during the draft, the NBA draft, and I was making fun of all the guys who were coming in their suits, because their suits were just like super.
They weren't fitted.
Or sometimes like one dude looked like Luke Skywalker. It was just, I was just like, what? That's not a suit. You're getting drafted into the NBA, bro. Like, and then the number 1 draft pick, Zion Williamson. He didn't wear a tie, and then the shirt was unbuttoned and the chest was out. And I was just like, yo, bro, I know you look like you're about to go to Cabana pool bar. like it was just like it didn't. I was just like, what happened to the suit and tie? But you can just see the culture kind of going away from the formal, from the structure, from the hierarchy, from the patriarchy.
I think you just gave a great example of how you can stay within the limits of a dress code and still express yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. And you definitely see that, the little nuances. Like, even I was criticizing him for not buttoning up his shirt. I'm like, okay, if you're not gonna wear a tie, bro, button up your shirt, because at least it shows some kind of order.
But I mean, that's
that's my
your
opinion.
perspective.
Yeah. No, it's my perspective. But the point I'm making is that these things, whether you button all the way to the top or you button one button, sends a message. That's my point.
So
right. Wear a tie, not wear a tie sends a message. Bow tie versus a regular tie sends a message. Birkenstocks versus Air Force One sends a message.
And this is where I would say, like, the predicament we're faced with, this whole issue, like we were talking about, okay, who's responsible for teaching us how to dress and those things. And I mean, there's a bigger issue here, I think, of also, like, how much do parents kind of let go of the responsibility for teaching because they're like, oh, my kid's in school.
Right.
The school's job is to teach my kids.
Yes.
And, like,
it's to enforce the dress.
And there's so many layers to that, whether that's, okay, yes, there's an educational progressional learning, but there's also so many other things your children are going to learn that you as a parent are still responsible for, right? Think of all the, like, more so emotional development stuff that you are responsible for. And so part of where I'm getting at is, like, how much have we as a society unloaded that responsibility onto the school system and onto, government or onto the church, and kind of said, oh, I don't have to worry about it. And I think there's a little bit of that involved here, because why did this rule get changed was because parents were complaining.
Because their kids were complaining to them.
And so now part of the dilemma here is that you've got a vocal minority, a handful of parents that were complaining to the school board, and we don't have the ability for a nuanced solution. It's a broad spectrum. Hey, because I mean, I think of how many private schools are all uniformed.
All of them.
Like, almost
all of them.
Almost all.
That's a good point, Joel. That's a good point.
Are uniformed, and you can still express yourself with uniforms. It's not as simple. Like, generally, there's lots of options. Yeah.
I
mean, you were talking about when
we went to ND. Yeah, when we went to ND, like, although we wore uniforms, you could still tell who was who. Yeah. Whether you had the guys who wore black Vans and you guys had the guys who wore black on black Air Forces, and you know what group they belonged to.
Right. So there's still nuance, but where I was trying to go with it is that we don't allow schools, because of the school board's perspective and kind of the broad solutions, where, hey, maybe there's a school where the parents all want their kids to have a higher level of dress code, but you can't actually do that because of the way we're doing this policy on a school board level. My answer to all of this would be let every school set their own dress code, right? Because now, depending on the context, maybe there's a reason why, hey, hats have become a problem in our school. We need to shut it down. Now, I know it's a silly example.
Yeah.
But you're not allowing for that nuance where school by school, we can address problems as they arise. Maybe for whatever reason with regards to midriffs, the girls continue to push the limits. It becomes a problem. There's always like, yeah, they're within the rules, but they're not within the rules. So like, hey, we're just going to shut it down completely because you're abusing the rules.
Yeah.
And so there's no ability to kind of nuance the rule to the actual small population you're dealing with.
Yeah. No. And again, I think like the point of school and the education system, there's no such thing as a neutral education, and all education is geared to producing a particular kind of citizen, right? Socio political engineering, right? And trying to make kids be a particular thing. So education, that's what it's geared to, right? And we look at the school board and we see how they're navigating the dress code. So my question to the supervisor or the overseers, I would ask them, like, what kind of people are you trying to produce? Versus, like you said, the good point about like the private school. Well, why is the private school having, why is there uniforms? Because to Jenna's point, it's a professional environment. Like, this is serious business.
Yeah. And when the parents are shelling out $10,000 a year per kid, they're like,
well, yeah, not just that, but yeah, but our kids are going on to do big things, right? So like that's so easy. That's so like not, you don't have to think to just be yourself, but it takes a lot of work and consideration to say, okay, look, I'm going to be something. I'm going to be that particular person, and everybody has their brand. I understand. Like kind of like, being on social media is our online resume, is what people call it. So if you're looking to be like a YouTube sensation, then your brand matters. So like there is kind of like high snobbery in the urban culture, right? So you want to be wearing Bape or Off-White or whatever, Supreme, whatever's in stock, right? That's high-end fashion. And those people are seen as, the standard of what's cool. So, if you're going to adjust to that and that's what you have to do, that's cool. I'm not saying everybody should be wearing shirt and tie. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you should understand your brand and the lane you're trying to run in. So there's nothing wrong with wearing, your skater gear or whatever the case, or there's nothing wrong with suit and tie. Just make sure that you're understanding that, you're forming your brand and people will judge you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who teaches us to dress, because teenagers are old enough to dress themselves, and they're going to have to reap the consequences of how they want to present themselves. Yes,
good point.
That's very true.
What would you leave the listener with? Since I didn't ask Jenna, but she kind of gave him the punchline.
Yeah, I think, I agree. I think they have to deal with those consequences, and I think that those who have influence should be helping to teach these kids that essentially what you're wearing, people are going to judge you at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. So be mindful of what you're doing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would agree with both of you guys. And so I'll leave the listener kind of with what I brought up near the end, was just that, I think this is an example of when you're doing things on a governmental level, you're just doing it on such a broad spectrum. So if you have issues with it being too conservative, not conservative enough, the problem is you're trying to create a solution for millions of students all at the same time.
Good point.
Or hundreds of thousands of students. And so I would say that, rather than being frustrated with your school board or your, the current rules, there's an aspect where you're actually frustrated with the way the system is designed. And so just recognizing that a little bit maybe helps you navigate the scenario with a little more grace. Because unfortunately there's nothing your principal can do about it. And if you really want to, you'd have to blow up the system or drastically change the way the system is designed. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions or comments, you guys know where to find us. 6 Cents Report on Facebook and Twitter.
And the show notes page will be at sixcentsreport.com.
All right. Remember, 6 cents makes change.
But you heard me? Does that make sense?